Someone say war crime.
Look, I be riding through my old hood, but I'm in my new whip. Same old attitude, but I'm on that new shit. They say they gon' ride me, see me never do nothing. Cause they know that's the reason they gon' end up on the news clip. Audemars on my wrist, bust down. We popping bottles like I scored a winning touchdown. Remember me dead broke, look at me up now. I run my city from South Philly back to Uptown. Thank God, all these bottles I pop, all this paper I've been getting, all these models I pop. I done sold 100,000 for my album got dropped, and I'm only 23. I'm just that look at me. I'm a boss like my Rose. Shorty asked me for a check, I told that I know.
This is War Crimes, a Global Accountability Crisis by yours truly, Harry McLaw. Now, let's get into it. So, failure to protect human rights. The key statement: the international community, through both legal and non-legal measures, have ultimately failed to respond effectively to human rights issues in the world today, is a controversial topic. This is especially controversial when discussing human rights issues which relate to war crimes. This is why our world, through both legal and non-legal measures, needs modernized systems in order to sustain human rights internationally. Now, here are some legal bodies. So the International Criminal Court, which is the ICC, the United Nations, which is the UN, and specifically the ICJ and the ICT, are all held accountable for the responsibility of war crimes on an international scale. Specifically through the Rome Statute under Article 8, war crimes are clearly listed, as you can see on the screen here. Now, we're going to quickly just go into depth of each one really quick, just so you can understand. The ICC was established to prosecute individuals for war crimes and crimes against humanity. However, its effectiveness is held by its reliance on global cooperation, leading to challenges in enforcement and accountability. The UN prioritizes maintaining international peace and security, yet its mechanisms often falter in preventing and responding to war crimes. Instances like the Rwandan genocide illustrate the UN's inability to take accountability action despite having peacekeeping forces present. Now, we're going to talk about the Rwandan genocide very soon. And finally, the Rome Statute, which was adopted in 1998, is extremely important. It explicitly defines war crimes. However, the reliance on state cooperation, yet again, a severe problem. So let's get back into it. War crimes can be committed by both individuals and states. It's important that these bodies enforce war crime laws and ensure they are not being breached in order to give all victims justice, protect children from being used as child soldiers, protect innocent civilians, and remove power from any individuals or state to exploit war crimes to gain power over another state. Here's a quick case study. These legal bodies, who are supposed to play a crucial role in prioritizing solving war crimes, are not very effective in responding to war crimes whatsoever, as they lack jurisdiction. An example being in the Rwandan genocide. This involved a mass slaughtering which killed about 800,000 people that were from the Tutsi ethnic group. Tensions between Tutsi and Hutu occurred as Tutsis were considered minorities. However, were favoured by the Belgians after colonization in 1916. This gave the Tutsi power for many years. In 1962, Rwanda became independent, which gave the Hutu more power, causing much more tension. Finally, on April 6, 1994, the assassination of the president had occurred, and his plane was shot down in Kigali. Hutus blamed the Tutsi for this, which led to a civil war. In reality, this blame was a pure excuse for the genocide due to the Hutus' hatred towards the Tutsis. The UN had peacekeeping forces in Rwanda at the time. However, they were completely ineffective as they were unable to intervene through the genocide due to the danger and scale of the genocide. The UN did not take decisive action to stop this genocide, even though these war crimes clearly break the Geneva Conventions, which should be enforced by the UN along with the ICC. However, the ICC didn't exist at the time and the bodies were ineffective. This means that the rights of individuals and specifically communities were not protected and genocide was just left to occur. The ICC, Geneva Convention, and the United Nations have also proven to be ineffective through their lack of responsibility and action taken, along with resource efficiency. These government bodies are being funded several billions of dollars, however, are ineffective in the category of war crimes. Now, from around 2005 to 2021, Australia played a key factor in patrolling Afghanistan. Joe Biden's election win resulted in the withdrawal of Australian troops from Afghanistan in 2021. Before they were withdrawn from 2006 to 2013, Australian troops had the main role of laying out combat operations against the Taliban, particularly in the south. Although their priority was to fight Taliban members, they were also responsible to protecting the civilians of Afghanistan. In 2014, the combat operation was put to an end, and the Australians had a new role of teaching the Afghan National Defence and Security Forces how to build capacity and improve their system. This was to assist them to defend the country against any threats. However, not all Australian investigate. Let me just have a quick sip. However, not all Australian individuals followed these overarching plans. The Brereton Report was a 4-year investigation led by Major General Paul Brereton. He found that 25 Australian soldiers were involved in the unlawful killing of 39 innocent Afghani civilians. It is told that young soldiers would kill prisoners to gain their first kill, or blooding, and plant weapons on civilians as an excuse to kill them. This was covered up by fellow soldiers. Now, although this was clearly warring crimes, the ICC did not take direct action. Although the first, third, and fourth section of the convention were blatantly breached, the ICC and United Nations lack enforceability and jurisdiction due to its resilience on state cooperation and allowed Australians to handle it. This means that most soldiers were given extremely light punishments. Only one person named Oliver Scholes was charged with a war crime in March 2023. He was the first Australian to be charged with committing a war crime. International bodies did absolutely nothing about the situation despite all of the evidence involved. This perfectly demonstrates how ineffectively these international bodies respond to war crimes. The reason why the ICC was ineffective is because the Australian government handled this through state sovereignty, meaning the ICC did not deal with the situation whatsoever. The fascinating part is that the only punishment these soldiers got was being dismissed from the ADF or SAS. This can be seen as potentially discriminatory and purposely done through the ICC. In 2021, the ICC shifted its eyes on prioritising crimes caused by ISIS or Taliban members, as they claim that these groups committed worse crimes than the United States. That was said by the owner of the ICC, the CEO of the ICC. This means that the ICC's lack of intervention for allied nations, yet prioritisation towards non-Western nations, may raise potential concerns of political bias in the prosecution of war crimes. Non-legal measures have some impact on war crimes simply due to the pressure that they apply to legal bodies. In the Rwanda genocide, media coverage had an impact because information about the genocide was published to society, and this applied pressure towards governments. Although legal bodies aren't very impactful, media exposure may have been the reason the United Nations had peacekeeping forces throughout the country in the first place. Now, NGOs such as the International Committee of the Red Cross and Human Rights Watch are quite important for aiding victims of war crime. However, NGOs have the pure focus of providing humanitarian aid after the genocide and do not actually help stopping the genocide itself or other war crimes. Media has some impact in the Brereton Report as well. As in Australia, media ensured public awareness through journalism programs such as the ABC, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the Guardian Australia. These examples suggest that non-legal measures are somewhat effective in responses towards war crimes, causing some political impact. However, they are not extremely effective. Conclusion. Finally, ultimately, legal bodies such as the ICC, UN, and Geneva Conventions, along with non-legal measures such as NGOs and the media, have demonstrated ineffectiveness in responding to war crimes. Due to the lack of recent reforms in global cooperation, it is difficult for these bodies to increase enforcement power and overall reduce political bias, resulting in these institutions failing to protect human rights. Thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure for this. This is my second ever episode of Harry McLaw. It's been a year since the last one. Hopefully this one was a lot better. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will be making more Harry McLaw content for you all. Thank you so much. Everyone, take care. Goodbye.